Welcome to the Intuitive Rising podcast. I'm your host, Amy Brooks. Up until about 5 years ago, I was your average mom of three. It was after the sudden loss of my father that my life changed forever and the rising within me began. Since then, I've embraced my gifts and have stepped into my role as an evidential psychic medium, past life reader, higher self mentor, holy fire Reiki practitioner, and published author. In this podcast, we will talk all things spiritual and healing through a very grounded and relatable approach. I hope you'll continue to join me each week, remembering who you always were as we rise together.
Hey risers, it's me, your host Amy Brooks, and I can't stop smiling. So if you're looking at me on YouTube, you can see I'm very smiley. I just did something that was really special and a highlight in my professional career. Absolutely. You can probably hear the joy in my voice if you're listening to me on a podcast platform, audio right now. You know how we all have someone that we look up to, someone who we feel inspired by, or we aspire to be more like in some way. A mentor, so to speak, somebody that shows up in our lives and we're like, this person, there's something about them and I'm really inspired by them. And I would love to be more of that. I want to be just like that. Well, our guest today is one of those people for me when it comes to my work as a psychic medium. This person inspires me. I am motivated by their success. I aspire to be more like them each and every day in my own career as a psychic medium. The ethics, the morals, the personal responsibility to share wisdom, to teach and mentor and come from, a really aligned place to leave people in a better place than you found them, to leave them feeling motivated, to leave them feeling hopeful and inspired. Our guest today has been that person for me. And so that person is none other than the Indigenous Shawn Leonard. Yes, I did that. That happened. I was able to convince, but he didn't take much convincing. He was so open and so lovely. And I just we had conversations before on social media, on Instagram. We had a few conversations over the last few years, and I had shared with him some of the similarities and synchronicities that we have together. And, I just reached out one day and I said, hey, would you ever think about coming on the Intuitive Rising podcast? And he's like, sure. When would you like to do that? And I was like, pardon me? Really? It was that easy. It's something that I have been working up the nerve to do for so very long. And, it just all worked out in divine timing when it was meant to happen. I didn't spend too much time introducing Shawn in great detail about what he does or who he is on our interview in this conversation. So I'm going to do so now. For those of you who are not familiar with Shawn Leonard is an international psychic medium. He works with people all over the world. He is a heart-centered Indigenous spirit talker. He is Mi'kmaq, as am I. We have the same Indigenous roots from the same place in the same province. It's really, really cool. He presently lives in Millbrook First Nation, which is in Nova Scotia, Canada, my home province, as many of you will know. And he's been working as a professional psychic medium for over 20 years. So this guy has seen a lot, heard a lot, experienced a lot, and has so much wisdom to share with us. He is very humble and grounded and authentic and compassionate, and the kindness just oozes out of him. And this is what he's known for in his work, as a really grounded, down-to-earth, kind, humble, authentic psychic medium. And this is what has, really added to his reputation as this really authentic psychic medium and someone who has been very, very successful in their field. He has, takes them on the road. He travels worldwide to live events and he does shows. He does radio and TV appearances. He has a school, an online school called Spirit Talker Tribe. And he does talk about it in this conversation and tells us when the next dates for that are coming up. They're just coming up in the fall. And, talks a little bit about his passion for teaching and being a mentor when it comes to spiritual concepts and topics and ideas, and how he incorporates his Indigenous culture and teachings from his background as well. He also has a TV show called Spirit Talker, and this is on Aboriginal People's TV network in Canada. I believe there's a way to watch it if you are not in Canada as well. And I'll see if I can find out how to do that and link it in the show notes. But he does have like social media. You can follow him on all platforms. He has a YouTube page. So I feel like there are some trailers from the seasons of his show, Spirit Talkers, that you could watch and kind of get a feel for Shawn yourself. He's somebody that you really have to see. You have to see it. You have to feel his energy. Today, what a gift. What a gift that Shawn gives us today. I didn't really have too many plans. You know how I am. I'm kind of just like, I'm not going to over prepare. I'm not going to get too stressed out. Not going to read off a script. That's not what we do here on the Intuitive Rising podcast. We just come from our heart. We speak from our heart. And we trust that whatever needs to be said or heard or learned will come through. And so Shawn works that way too and was very go with the flow, and the conversation just flowed. I didn't even really have to ask too many questions. He is a very seasoned communicator. He also shares a little bit about that and how he got out of, being fearful about public speaking and how that's evolved and how he's become this amazing communicator. So yeah, without further ado, here is Shawn Leonard. Enjoy, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of the Intuitive Rising podcast. I'm your host, Amy Brooks, and I am just over the moon today. So excited to introduce you to none other than the Indigenous Medium Shawn Leonard. Thank you so much for joining us today, Shawn.
Well, thank you for having me.
All the way from my home province of Nova Scotia, which is also your home province. And so that's where you are right now.
Nova Scotia.
Amazing. So you've been transient, like you have your home base there, but you kind of, you tour. You're all over the place. Okay. So I first kind of wanted to talk about how I first kind of knew about you or connected with you. I mean, you've been on my radar. I've certainly known about you from your TV show that's on APTN, Spirit Talker, and I've watched that over the years. But I think it was last fall, I was actually recovering from surgery, and I was binge listening to the podcast that Colette Baron-Reid has called Into the Wooniverse. And I was listening to your episode that you were on. And it was the first episode that I'd heard with you where you really delved into your background, which I loved, by the way, because I love to hear about people's backgrounds, but I was kind of astounded by some of the similarities we had. So I knew that you were Mi'kmaq, and so my listeners also know that I am. This is part of my culture and heritage as well. But I was astounded to find out we're from the same band, right? And have those connections. And another similarity that I absolutely love to learn about is that your mediumship kind of abilities, I don't know if it would be fair to say it kind of came about, or the passing of your father was a bit of a catalyst for that in some way, or it's really when it became apparent for you. Is that fair to say?
Yes. I mean, I think my whole life has been a constant unfoldment of this understanding of spirit and spirit world. But I mean, I never had really been profoundly affected by the loss of somebody until my father, for sure.
Yeah. Same. I feel as well like I'm able to look back in hindsight and see I was always connected to spirit, and there's certainly many, many instances where I can see that I was, tapping into spirit or being visited by spirit. But it was the loss of my own dad that really was the thing that went, oh, okay, so this is what's happening. It was the awareness that I too was a medium and that I could initiate contact. That was really the turning point for me. So he came through to me in a visitation. He wasn't even passed yet. He was on life support.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I thought that was an interesting similarity. Sometimes people step into their mediumship because something like that happens. Sometimes, it just randomly comes about. But do you feel like people can um, learn how to do this, even if you're kind of not naturally feeling like you've always been connected to spirit, as we may have been?
Well, I think everybody can learn to be more psychic, more aware, more connected.
Yes.
Do I feel like everybody should be a professional psychic medium? No.
No. Hmm.
But I feel like that everybody is connected to different degrees. And
Yes.
that would all depend on whether or not how much passion you have for the subject and actual working with your abilities. It's like pretty much any ability or skill that a lot of people can hone.
Hmm.
But if you don't really enjoy it, or if it doesn't bring you joy, and if it's not
Hmm.
something that really speaks to you, then you probably wouldn't be as motivated to explore it or go deeper. And I find people who are good mediums that are out there in the world serving people, they have a genuine desire, and there's something inside them that says, I want to be more connected. I want to
Hmm.
have more connection to my own people, but I also want to serve people with this
Hmm.
connection. And so I feel like that is a big part of the degree of level of how strong I feel like that ability will come to certain people.
Absolutely. I agree with that as well. I kind of liken it sometimes to singing. Like we all have a singing voice. We all can sing, but some
Well,
of us,
I
will
would have
take
to
it.
disagree about the singing.
Well, we all do have a voice. You could sing in the shower, I'm sure,
Yeah,
but like whether how good that is or how naturally skilled you are or how much
right.
effort you put into it,
Yeah, I don't know.
we
I'd
have to.
have to work really hard at singing.
I agree. It's not my natural forte. It's funny. If I wasn't doing this work, I would love to be a singer, maybe in my next life. But I definitely feel that for you. And I have clients come to me or, students and ask like, well, I was always taught that this was something that you had to be born with. I feel like, I don't know, there's a level of maybe it feeling very natural to you.
Well, we're
Um,
all born with it.
we're all born with it. That's
It's
right.
not. It's
Yes.
when people say, "I think this is something you have to be born with." We all are,
Yes.
but we forget, or
That's
we
right.
do, or we're not taught to remember, or there's nothing that happens for us to kind of trigger this like deeper understanding again. And
Right.
I mean, at certain places in life, like the loss of my father, or in the situation in your own life with your own
Hmm.
father, that there's times that are meant to trigger us into remembering again.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And that's when I use the word catalyst for me. That I feel like that situation with my dad and losing my dad the way that I did was that thing that helped me remember what
Right.
was always there and put the pieces together. So I also found it interesting. So I've heard you talk on a few podcasts, but one thing you mentioned was that you kind of were taught by spirit, right? So have you ever taken any sort of mentorship course, or you really just kind of allowed this to unfold as it
I let spirit
has?
teach me, to be
Yes.
honest. Like it's, I've read, I've watched other mediums, I've learned from other mediums, like watching
Yes.
people out there in the world how they work with information.
Yes.
But until you actually start to work with the information yourself, and I think that's the real teacher is like,
That's right.
how what is your psychic strength first? Like some people, a lot of people see like they're very good at seeing things and
Yeah.
having images being impressed upon their mind. Some
Mm-hmm.
people are very clairsentient. Many women are very clairsentient
Mm-hmm.
and clairvoyant. But some are very clairaudient as well.
Mm-hmm.
Very more rare, I think, the clairaudience part.
Mm-hmm.
But it depends on which abilities that are your strength, and then working with those, and then developing the ones that you feel like you're a little bit weaker in.
Right.
And as you develop and grow and trust, spirit's going to be your greatest teacher, because I wish I could say that and I mean, there's not a vocabulary that is set in stone for all mediums or spirit talkers or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, what have you. We all have our own vocabulary of sorts that we develop and grow. And
Yes.
sometimes, often, spirit, when communicating a message, will use a memory that you have
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have, that means
Mm-hmm.
something to you. So they
Mm-hmm.
may show you something that says, "Hey, I know what this means,"
Mm-hmm.
and then when you relay that experience to that person, they're like, "Oh my God, I'm going through this right now."
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so spirit can use many times your own thoughts, memories, experiences
Mm-hmm.
through life to communicate a message to someone else as well. But I'd say really it's about development of your skills, understanding your skills and strengths, and working with them, and understanding how to develop them. There's a lot of misunderstanding in relation to how to develop like clairvoyance or clairaudience, or how to be more perceptive with your clairsentient abilities. And you know, when spirit does communicate, it's not like it, you know, even though you may have a strength, which could be clairvoyance, where you actually have impressions that you see, where you become mindful in your mind, and you have pictures of things that come in. But it's the subtlety of what comes into your mind visually, but then also learning how, you know, what does the vibe contain in this picture? You know, why, when they showed me this story or this image, what does this mean? For instance, I'll give you an example.
Thank you.
I just did an event in St. John's, Newfoundland, not that long ago. And I had a lady there that I connected to her father. And, you know, her father's coming through, and he validated his name and a few other things. Then he showed me something that seemed significant. And because a lot of people don't know that your loved ones see you. And he showed me, he was very specific. He showed me an old boot, which could mean so many different things.
Right.
But then I was like, okay, but he only showed me one. And this is where you have to kind of trust and step into it. And you're not sure, I'm not sure, because I'm literally the middle person, the medium. And I'm not sure where this is headed, but I know it's going somewhere. And that's the first part of mediumship or spirit communication, is trust. It's trust. And when you step into this unknown space with trust, then it's like they leave you little breadcrumbs to get to the place that you need to be. So as I saw this boot, it was only one. I said, so you must have one of your old father's boots, because he's like emphasizing one boot, but not two boots. And she's like, nope. I'm like, okay, this is really strange. I said, there must mean something, because I don't know what this means yet. Then she took it out to her father in my brain, showed me outside in a garden and filled it full of dirt and then put a plant in it. And I'm like, okay, well, you must have a boot. And I said, it looks like it has holes in it, so the water can run out even. And this is where I know this means something, but it's specific to this person, right? This is where mediumship, the validation of things that come through, are specific to people when you're connecting to their loved ones in the spirit world and they're communicating to you. So when I said that, she started to cry, and she goes, oh my God, on Father's Day, I put an old boot, it wasn't my father's boot, out in the garden on Father's Day, and I put a plant in it, and there's holes all in the boot, and I put a dog in it because my dad loved dogs, and I knew my dad would love this. So why would her father then choose that image? Because one, I mean, that experience that she had with her father that day, remembering him, planning the plan, putting the dog specifically on Father's Day for her father, you know, is important to say that her dad was part of it. That's that right. He saw that, and he's looking for a unique way to validate. Now, nobody knows this story except her, and this is not like public or out in the world in any way. It's just her. Yes. And she actually happened to take a picture on her phone, and she came up after the event and showed me the boot, and it was like exactly what I saw. Yeah. And but why would a loved one want to bring your attention to that? I mean, one, they already said, you know, who he was, how he died, some messages, but then he shows me the old boot. One, our loved ones are with us, and they're looking for unique ways to say, hey, I'm with you, I'm around you, I love you, I'm looking for something that no one could know to prove to you that I'm with you. Yes. So that visual, that clairvoyant image that comes into my mind is what he used. But when I saw it, it was like when you see an image, you feel it too. It's like there's depth to everything. It's not just a picture that flashes in your mind. You see it, but you feel it. And I feel the significance and connection to the dad. And the day that it was important that she put it there. I didn't know it was Father's Day, but I just said it must have been a very special day you did this for him, because, and she says it was Father's Day just passed. And so when you think of your loved ones and you're doing something in their memory or honor, that they become aware that you're doing it. You know, they're seeing you doing that, and then by showing me that, hey, I saw this. Yes. You know, means so much to the person that's receiving that message.
Those are the messages.
And that's how things kind of like mediumship unfolds. You know, it's stepping in. There's certain things that are coming through, whether who they are, who they're with, who they're around, how they may have passed. These are validating things that are great. But it's better that you know that they're with you, and they look for those unique things to prove that.
I agree.
Or if they know that you're struggling with a loss in a particular way, like, you know, they weren't able to be there when her dad passed away, you know, or your dad was in a coma, and you know that you stepped out for a minute and then you made his journey and you weren't there at the moment that he passed or whatever, right? So it's like they look for ways to say, hey, you know, it's okay. I waited for you to leave because it was easier for me to let go when you weren't standing right there.
Yes.
thank you for kissing me and say goodbye. And I was there for that part of it. But I also needed for you to move away so that I could step out of my physical form and move in the spirit body. So sometimes people need to hear those messages.
Yes.
And that's where, because people hang on to all kinds of different things about surrounding the loss of a person that they love. And, it's not always, it's not happy, joyful memories that you're going through when you're losing somebody in the physical form for a long time. So coming to a spirit talker, a medium like yourself, Amy, that, people are looking for, one, validation, and then sometimes a healing message that can come through to help them move out of a space where they were stuck energetically in their grief, so that they can live a more connected life with their family member or their friend, but also to continue that relationship, help them understand what that looks like.
Yes.
And it's very much like doing things that you love, speaking to them still. It could be planting the flower out in the garden in the boot that, your dad would love on Father's Day. But it's honoring them where they are, loving them where they are.
Yes.
And that's the boiled, mediumship down in that. I would say that's kind of what that's like and how it all unfolds.
I agree. Yeah. And I always, thought it's not, I used to struggle sometimes when those kind of random things come in and I'm like, well, what is this? Right? Like you don't have any context at first. You just get this random boot. Or for last night I did a session actually, and it was a cookie jar, right? But I don't know what the cookie jar is all about. I just see the cookie jar. And it happens to be so significant because that person literally just, took the cookie jar down and it was their grandmother's, and they were giving it to another family member. And it had just happened like within a day or so. So I think those are really important. And I always remind myself, it's not my job to make sense of the information, right? It's just my job to share it. So just stay cookie jar, because I used to sometimes in the early days almost want to filter things that didn't come in with immediate like context or understanding for me, because I'd think, oh well, this isn't going to make sense, I'm not going to say it. But it's always those things that so you're right, leaning in and trusting. So I just began to trust and say cookie jar, and then you see the person's face, right? Like you never know what's going to be that thing. You could give somebody like 1,000,001 pieces of evidence that their father is here, and then you say cookie jar and it's like, oh my God, like that's the thing. You never know what it's going to be. So yeah.
And I've been with people, I mean, and that triggers a memory for me particularly, that I remember when I did a session for somebody way back when, and it was this young lady had come to talk to her grandma. So I made a connection to her grandma, and a lot of things came out. And then one of the things she kept showing me was a tea saucer, that you put a teacup on.
Yeah.
But on the saucer was like 2 or 3 cookies. And I said, this is so strange. She keeps repeating this. And she's like, do you know why I should be putting cookies on a plate? She's like, nope. I'm like, that is so weird. Just remember it. And then about 3 minutes later, you see this light go off in her hand. She goes, oh my God, how could I not remember this? She said, I asked my grandma before coming to see you that she tell me her nickname, and not just her name or other things. And my grandma's nickname was Cookie. Everybody called her Cookie. And you said it, and she just bawled. And I'm like, I didn't even know what was happening.
Right. Like we don't always know what it is.
I don't know, but she just made me play with like 3 cookies on it. They're like, why do I have to emphasize the cookies? She's emphasizing the cookies.
Yeah.
And she's like, because she came in and she was so caught up in the moment.
Yeah.
She lost track of what she had asked her grandma about. And her grandma validated that way. And again, sometimes spirit, even though it's a name, they can use something visually, like clairvoyantly, to get a message across that is meant to be spoken. It's not the image, but it's what you're going to get from the image, what you're going to say from that.
Put it together.
That means to that person, and that happens often. I remember another time I was actually on Hay House Radio way back in the day. I don't know how many years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, with John Holland. And I was another great medium and a friend and mentor. So I was on his show, and I only ever did one show with him before Hay House had changed their format and such. But so I was a guest on a show, and he had people calling in, to do sessions. And I found it very difficult because I had earbuds on, trying to hear. And then it was like, I couldn't even hear them. I had to hear them through another connection. And it was like, I could barely make out who they are. And I was like, what did you say your name was again? I'm like, Jen? Oh, okay, Jen. And then I was like, I couldn't really even make out the person, what they were saying. And so anyway, this lady comes through, and because of the short time on Hayos Radio that we were recording, I asked people to tell me, okay, listen, we have a very limited time. If there's somebody you want to particularly talk to, don't tell me anything about them. Just say, is there a message from my dad? Is there a message from my mom? So that I could focus my energy in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so she came on and said, well, I really want to talk to my dad. I'm like, okay. So Jen, and I'm just assuming her name's Jen because I don't really remember.
Yeah.
But, there's some things come through that she understood. And there was a couple things she didn't understand. And then her dad shows me something, a dog. I'm like, okay, you must have it, because I'm thinking, I'm thinking literally.
A dog.
Like, and spirit is not always literal; they're figurative.
That's right.
And so he shows me this little brown terrier dog, and I'm like, oh my God, your dad must have been a big dog lover. He has a dog with him in the spirit world. And he's like, my dad hated dogs. I'm like, that's so weird. Why would he keep showing me this dog? And I said, well, I have to follow this through because I know he's taken me here for a reason. So this little brown terrier reminds me of a TV show when I was a young person, and the TV show was called Benji.
Right.
And she goes, oh my God, my dad's nickname is Benji.
Yes.
I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, my dad's name is Benjamin. Everybody calls him Benji. I'm like, I didn't even see that coming. I'm like, I literally thought he was talking about a dog. But this is where, when spirit communicates things to you, it could be literal, could be figurative, but it's more of stepping into that zone of trust and working with what's given. And that's how predominantly how mediumship works. And certain things I do know without a doubt. I'm like, okay, I absolutely know this means this. But sometimes I'm confused as the sitter that's sitting in front of me. But when you follow it through, it unfolds. And it makes so much sense to the person rather than saying the name, because maybe some spirits have a stronger ability to communicate audibly.
Right.
And then some spirits have a stronger sense of communicating visually. So he was a better visual communicator.
Right.
So he was working with what he was able to communicate to me, with his ability to be able to get me to say this, that, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that was done all on live radio, and it was just like really cool. Because cool. I mean, the audience, or the people who are listening in or hearing this experience take place, they're part of that experience. Yeah. And they can see how mediumship can unfold.
That's right.
And it's not me or you or everyone knows everything. We don't. That's a fallacy. Yeah. No medium, spirit talker, psychic just walks around and knows everything. And there's people out there that drive me crazy sometimes. They just think, okay, well, what am I thinking about?
I know.
Like, well, I have no freaking idea.
Even if I could find out, I don't think I'd want to know. Or like, tell me the lotto numbers. I'm like, if I knew them, I wouldn't be here.
Recently, I went and played poker, a poker game down in Las Vegas not that long ago.
Ooh, fun.
And I did really well. And because I love playing poker, it's fun for me. Yeah. But I mean, there's a part of reading people that I'm really good at. Yeah. So not necessarily knowing the cards, but just their vibe. Yeah. They're lying. They're telling the truth.
Yes.
You get a sense of things. And so anyway, I played in this event, and this guy goes, he found out who I was. Yeah. He goes, okay, I'm thinking of a number. What is it? I'm like, I don't freaking know. 14. You're right. He goes, how the freak do you know that? Like, I don't know, 14 just popped in my head.
Just popped in your head,
And then he told me like an hour-long story about why 14 was important to him. And it was like, I think he just looked at me weird for the rest of the day. But
right. That's funny.
It could have been any number, but for whatever reason, it was 14. And I mean, sometimes things like that may come to a medium or psychic, but it's not, I know without a doubt. It's it just pops into my brain. It's like all of a sudden I see 14. I'm like, okay, well, 14 is important. And I just threw it out there, not caring whether or not I was right or wrong. And it just happened to be right.
It just happened to be right. Yeah. Because we're receiving the information, right? We're not actually like digging for it. I think, the moment I start to feel like I need to dig for something is the moment I know that I've stepped too far in my own ego brain and I need to get back in. I'm just receiving.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a big challenge for people that are interested in mediumship or trying, to work with their skills, of that balance, the discernment between like my thoughts versus spirit's thoughts. Is there a way that you can, because you speak so eloquently and you speak so, I feel like you are gifted in communication in the sense that you can
Well,
make
I'm a
something.
Gemini.
Are you? I have a
Yeah.
Gemini midheaven. So I found that that's significant because that means that
Yeah.
my career is focused in communication. But you are a Gemini.
I'm a
Amazing.
Gemini, born on June 4th. I mean, Geminis, especially men, more
Yeah.
so than women sometimes, I think are great communicators, great educators, teachers, talkers.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think it's an accident. I mean, if I was to pick a life that, I mean, I feel like we all have a life purpose too.
Yes.
I feel like I'm fulfilling this purpose as the person that I am. So, imagine we're all up in the spirit world thinking, okay, well, if I was going to do this and be this and all this was going to unfold in life in this way, when would be the perfect time for me to come in?
To be
And you
born.
go,
Yeah.
oh, well, June 4th, perfect. I'll come
I
in then.
agree.
I'll be in alignment with all those Gemini
Yeah.
traits. And so I think that has a little bit to do with it. But I'm going to tell you, way back, I wasn't always as good of a speaker, talker, teacher, communicator.
Yeah.
And that's a gift too that you can kind of like unfold and develop and grow
Yeah.
it. I remember the first time I spoke in public, and it was way back when I was thinking about being a minister in training with the Silver Brown organization Nova Spiritus. I was already working as a
Okay.
psychic medium like 20
Right.
some years ago, and so I got to be a minister in training for a very short time, and then realized it was not my calling.
Right.
But there was an aspect of something that I was meant to get from the experience.
Yes.
It put me in front of people, not to do sessions, but it put me in front of people that I had every month or every other month. I had to do a talk on a subject,
Right.
whether it be spirit guides or angels or or the other side or whatever it was. And even though it was a passion that I have.
Mm-hmm.
When I get up in front of people, I had my whole speech written out in front of me, and I was like a robot reading from my paper.
Yeah.
And I actually stuttered, I paused, I struggled. It was painful to watch me talk. I know it was. And then at some point, about 10 minutes in, and I was just like, I was stuttering, and I was so
Mm-hmm.
fear struck of being in front of people.
Yeah.
A voice in my head said to me, Shawn, don't read from your paper.
Mm-hmm.
Talk from your heart about this subject. And I just said, I flipped the paper over. I'm like, I'm going to try a different approach, everyone. I know that you're going to like this because it's going
to be better than that.
I'm pulling you all with this other talk I'm doing. So let me just start speaking from my heart and what I know about this. And I just started to speak, and everybody got up and clapped at the end. I think maybe they were just happy it was finished, but it was like a moment that shifted the way I approach things in the way I stand up and approach people in a live setting. And I've never done it any different since. I have points of things I want to talk about. Like, let's say I want to talk about this story, that story, yes. Whatever. And I know at some point I want to get there.
Yeah.
But I don't have an agenda. I just say, I like to talk about this, this, and this. And then I just go.
Let it go. Let it flow.
Go, and then it's like, okay. And then if I don't remember, I find my guides were going, excuse me, Shawn, weren't you supposed to talk about that story? I'm like, oh yeah, thanks.
Yes.
And then I talk, and it's like all of a sudden they're like tapping me in my mental psychic brain, like, hey, Shawn, you were supposed to talk about this. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I got to tell you about this story. Thanks for the reminder. And then I just tell the story. But much greater storyteller, speaker than speech reader.
This is beautiful because it really reminds me of the brief conversation that we had before I hit record today, which was, I've got some stuff on paper, but I'm not the kind of interviewer that's going to like read off my paper. I'm just going to kind of like let it flow. And that's actually why I started this podcast is I, like you, felt at the beginning, kind of fearful of speaking to people, or even that my message mattered, or am I too long-winded, or do I say too much, are people going to get this? And the minute I just kind of let it happen from a heart-led space, the better it is. So I don't do a whole lot of that prep work stuff. I just show up. And that's also gone into my work too. Like before a session, I used to have some rituals that I used to do to kind of get myself in the headspace. But I feel like I've just moved into a place where I feel confident that I can just kind of sit down and I'm ready. Do you find that too with your work? Like, did you find before you used to have to do certain things to feel like you were plugged in?
No, well,
No?
I do sometimes. I mean,
Yes.
if I was to meet a client, I
Yes.
would be very intentional about how I approach that meeting.
Yes.
For instance, um, I don't do too many personal readings anymore, but
Right.
I did do a group session last year in Halifax at the Casino Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
There was like 600 people there for it.
No.
And I read a lady in the audience who had lost her son, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And he died in a car accident, which was very tragic. And they had donated his organs to help other
Yeah.
children.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool message came out during the session. One, I asked her, I said, because he kept showing me a new baby.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't look or appear to be pregnant. And I said, this is so weird, but are you pregnant now? She's like, no. I'm like, are you sure you're not pregnant? She's like, no, I'm not pregnant. But my surrogate mom that's here with me is. I'm like, wow. And then I said it was a girl. And I said, well, then he wants me to validate his sister that is going to be coming into the world. And I said, you know the sex, right? I asked her if she knew the sex first. She said she did. And I said, so it's okay for me to say.
Yeah.
And it was. And then another really cool thing that came through at the event, I said that your son tells me that, that his organs were donated to help other children.
Yeah.
And she said there were. And then I felt my liver.
Yeah.
I felt it. I could feel it on my body. So this is another form of communication, like clairsentience. It's not just a sensory thing. It's a physical thing sometimes you can feel. You could go deaf, blind. You may feel like you had an impact.
Yeah.
You may feel like your finger's missing or whatever. But I started to feel my liver. And I said, this is so strange, but your son wants to tell me. I said, do you know who has any of his organs? And she goes, no. I am pretty sure your son is telling me you're going to find out who received your son's liver. And he says it's going to be pretty quick. And she goes, well, I don't know how I'd find out. Someone in the audience stands up and goes, I know who has your son's liver.
What?
I'm like, what
Oh my
the hell?
goodness.
And it happened like instantaneously. She goes,
Yeah.
I know the mom whose son in Ontario received your son's liver. I can't believe he's bringing it up. And nobody knows. Nobody knows this.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that it saved my friend's son's life. And she's crying, I'm crying. It's like profound.
Wow.
So after the session, I said, after she came up, because everyone that I do readings for in the audience, I say, come up after. I'd like to meet you, get a picture.
Yeah.
And so she comes up and I asked her, because she was there with her surrogate mom. I said, so, your husband didn't come with you? And she goes, no, he's not ready for anything like this. And I said, you know what? When he is ready, and I don't do this very often because I'm so busy, if he's open to it, because I don't want anybody coming that is not open or available or open to the process. But if he wants to utilize this form of healing, I'll provide a session for you. And she said, well, I'll go home and talk to him. And it was about a year that had gone by, and she messaged me and she said, Shawn, my husband says he's ready now. So we had done a session. But so how I would approach it to get to the message was, one, before anybody arrives, I make sure that I smudge. I clear my own aura, my own space. I clear the space. I set intentions.
Yes.
I invite those spirits that are connected to the people that are coming to me through the smudge, because the smudge is an extension of your words, your prayers, your thoughts, what you feel in your heart. Mm-hmm. So I surround the space with love and only invite higher level energy. Yes. And invite the spirits of the people that are coming. I speak out loud and say, I want you to know, I'm inviting you to be part of the session. I'm available. This is how you can best communicate to me. Right. So I'm very clear to them. I'm very clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. I said, just make sure you talk very slow to me and don't overwhelm me, because I can't keep up with people who overwhelm me with a bunch of things one after another. You gotta. I know that if you're excited, just make sure that you keep it slow for me.
Yes.
I have to process and give it as accordingly. And then I meditate. So I work on raising my own energetic vibration. Even for a live show, I will do this. I'll meditate. I'll do a series of visualized meditations, like visual exercises that I'll do to reawaken that ability to see within my own mind.
Right.
And then I pull energy up through my chakras, my energy centers within my own body, and extend my aura.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wait for people to come, I meet them, and then they sit down, I explain my process, and, and then I get into the session.
Yeah.
So that's my approach.
That's your approach. Yeah.
It's my approach.
Yeah.
Does it always happen that way? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes spirit has a different agenda.
Yeah.
If you're meant to connect and it's meant to be, and, they don't care about your meditation, your smudging. They're like,
no, exactly.
No, buddy, we got a plan for you today at COSTCO, and you're going to be talking to so-and-so, and this is just how it's going to work.
Yeah, that's actually where I was going to go. Like for me, I also set my intentions and do that kind of meditative, raising my vibration state, and ask for, I usually say one at a time, please, because otherwise sometimes I feel they all come in at once. Yeah. But I have been very clear with spirit that I really only want to connect in terms of like a client spirit or, somebody else's, that's not me, that's not connected to me, to their loved ones when I'm open. So I really have set that boundary that just when I say so, please. Because otherwise, I feel like I can become very overwhelmed with going out in public, like going to COSTCO and having everything come forward. But sometimes one does kind of poke in. Do you find that too sometimes?
Very rare.
Very rarely.
I always tell spirit, don't put me in a situation where I don't want to go and read everybody at COSTCO. So don't even come to me if there's with a bunch of people there. Yeah. I'm not available for that. I have my own boundaries, and I'm here to shop. And but but I have put out there, if something's really meant to be, then make it so apparent that I'm aware that it's happening, and then I will allow that to take place.
Yes.
And it's happened a few times, mostly at COSTCO, because that's pretty much the only place I go shopping.
Okay.
My wife does all the shopping at other stores. I do all the COSTCO
You're the
stuff.
COSTCO guy.
Yeah. And to tell you a story, there's a guy named Danny Glover that I was at COSTCO. And the reason why I went to even COSTCO at this day was like everything just aligned, because I had a cancellation. I was like, wow, got the morning off. And this is way back when I was doing one-on-one sessions. Got the morning off. I'm going to go to COSTCO, pick up a few things. I got a reading like at 2 p.m, so I'll be back in plenty of time for that. So it's like, say, 10:30-ish. I go to COSTCO, do all my stuff. But you know what? Don't want to be here forever. I don't want to pick up too much stuff. I need milk. I need eggs. I need some, bread and something like this. And I'm not going to get in a cart today. Pretty much the only day I've ever not gotten a cart.
What were you thinking? It's COSTCO.
I'm thinking, I don't want to be here too long and buy too much stuff. I always say it's everything and more store, because I always go in for everything and get more.
Yeah.
But so I didn't get a cart. I pick up my things. I'm going through the cash register, and I noticed that I haven't ate breakfast. I got to get something to eat. Mm-hmm. My stomach's growling. I'm going to get in the line for a hot dog and a pop. And so I get in the line, and this fellow turns around and goes, "Oh my God, you're Shawn Leonard." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Shawn Leonard." And who are you exactly? And he's there with 2 little kids, and he goes, "Well, my name is Dan." And I said, "Have we met before?" He goes, "Well, you tried to read me once." I'm like, "What do you mean I tried to read you once?" He goes, "Well, I was at a live show at the Halifax Forum with you many, many years ago. Mm-hmm. One of your first shows that you did in Halifax, and I went because a bunch of friends wanted me to go. And anyway, you walked up to me in the audience and looked at me and said, asked me if my mom was passed. And then you said, is there somebody named Mildred connected to you?" And he said, "To be honest, I said no. But my mom is Mildred, and she has passed. You scared the shit out of me."
Yeah.
He said, "You startled me so bad I didn't even know what to say, and you walked away, and I never got to talk to you again." Wow. And he says, "I've regretted that day ever since that I was there, that I never actually said, yeah, my mom is Mildred, and she has passed." And I'm like, that's okay. I mean, if people aren't ready, they're just not ready.
Yeah.
And I move on. I don't take it personally. And so here we are at COSTCO. It's his mom's birthday.
Of course.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, he was in Newfoundland. He just got back. He was in Newfoundland for a brief visit, and he went to his mom's grave, and he planted some new blue juniper trees on his mom's grave. Mm-hmm. And when he walked into COSTCO today, he said that there was people outside planting blue juniper trees. I thought that's kind of weird that I've never seen anybody planting any trees, let alone blue juniper trees.
Yeah.
And he says, now I'm running into you. He says, it's getting really weird today. I'm like, well, I'm sure your mama is just saying, she's looking for a way to get your attention. She knows that
Yes.
you're in Newfoundland, and
Yeah.
and I know that she loves you immensely, and is looking for a unique way to grasp your attention, to say that she was with you through that whole experience.
Yes.
And the blue junipers aren't an accident. Us bumping into each other. I said, I'm not even supposed to be here today, so a lot of stuff had to happen to get me to be here right beside you.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he tears up a bit, and he grabs his food, grabs his kids, and goes to sit down. And I grab my hot dog and my pop, which I just filled up, and I realize I have to sit down because I literally can't carry everything. I can't. I didn't bring a cart today.
Right.
Right? For whatever reason, that little voice in my head says, Shawn, you don't need a cart today.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I won't have a cart today. And so I'm looking around for a table, and there's picnic table style seating at COSTCO. There's 4 people can sit at a spot. Every single table's full except his.
Of course.
Him and his 2 children. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting this.
Mildred.
I'm going to have to go sit down.
Mm.
I'm going to have to go sit down. I'm like, Dan, man, would you mind if I sat with you? And he goes, I was really kind of hoping that you would ask.
Yeah.
And I said, well, this is, all this stuff that is happening. I think I'm getting the message here. I need to give your mom some more time. Would you be available if I made a connection more deeper to your mom? He says, no, I would really like that. Okay. So I sit down, and I put my hot dog aside, and I said, listen, your mom tells me she died in an accident. And she showed me a fire, and she said she wasn't alone. I don't know who was with her, but it feels like a family member. But she says that she tried to get up and get out of the house during the fire, but she collapsed from smoke inhalation. She says she didn't suffer, but she died from the smoke inhalation. And he started to cry. And he goes, oh my God, my mom died in a fire in Newfoundland when I was young. Yeah. With her sister. Me and my dad went fishing for the weekend, and my mom and my aunt, her sisters, were going to have a little party while we were gone. So they decided to have a few drinks, and they got a little intoxicated, and they decided they were going to cook some French fries. And then they both had passed out. And from what I'm told, he said, the fireman had told my family that she never woke up, she never got out of bed. And I'm like, well. She showed me she collapsed in the living room but it was the smoke inhalation that got her. She didn't actually die from the flames. And he goes, well, I have to disagree with that part, but you're right about everything else. It was an accident and all this. And so he cried, and I'm start eating my hot dog and talk to his kids for a minute. And he says, okay, you can't say anymore because I don't think I can do this here. I'm like, that's fine. So he gets up to leave, and his mom now puts her hand on my shoulder. Right here. I can feel her hand on me, touching my shoulder. I'm like, okay, I have to tell you one other thing before you leave. And he's wearing a hoodie and a long sleeve shirt. I said, your mom really likes what you have right here. And he pulls down his hoodie, and there's a tattoo of his mom there. Like a picture of his mom tattooed on his arm. She really wanted me to say she liked that. And he cried, and he says, okay, you got to stop. I can't do this. And he leaves. Yeah. And for the truth of it, I didn't really remember who he was. I because some time went by. I was writing my first book, The Language of Spirit, which is no longer for sale anymore.
I know, because I tried to purchase it and I can't find it anywhere.
Well, it's been rewritten, re-edited, rewritten, and with 16 new chapters. And I'm going to show this to you.
Yeah.
But this is my new book, Spirit Talker.
Yes.
I just did the reveal opening today. I haven't put it out on the internet just yet.
Oh, thank you for sharing with us.
I got my box, and I opened it, and this is my new book.
So excited.
Spirit Talker by Hay House Publishing.
Yes, coming out on August 8th?
August 8th. Yeah, absolutely. I thought, what a cool date for that to come out. And manifestation number, abundance, 8-8.
That's right.
And I didn't even pick it. They picked that for me. And so anyway, you can pre-order that now on my website, shawn-leonard.com. Yes. And I think that story that I'm telling you about is in there too.
Okay.
But anyway, he left, and I remember I had a ghostwriter there named Rennie Hartleb who was helping me write the first book.
Yeah.
I had a different ghostwriter named Daniel McQuarrie helping with the second book, this newest book. And So I was sitting with her and she goes, you got any of those Teresa Caputo moments? And this is like literally a week after I
Yeah.
just saw this guy, Dan, at the COSTCO. I'm like, I tell her this story and she goes, I love it. We should put it in the book. You need to reach out to him and see if we can get his permission. And I'm like, I have no idea who this man is. I think his name might have been like, Dan. I'm not sure. I know he had a couple of kids. And she goes, well, see if you can find him on Facebook. I'm like, I got like 20-some thousand people on my Facebook like page. You think I'm going to find Dan?
Yeah.
And I don't even know if he's on my like page.
Right.
And so I just said, okay, Crater, I mean, if he, this is meant to be part of it, then you need to find a way to reconnect him. I come home from my meeting and I turn on my computer and the first email that pops out is from Dan Glover. Okay. And he goes, Shawn, I was just thinking about you. And I never got a chance to say thank you. But I also have to tell you something. I went back and talked to the firemen in Newfoundland. And you were right. They didn't tell us the truth back in the day. I talked to one of the firemen that was there. My mom did try to get out and she did collapse and she did die of smoke inhalation. And he goes, how do you know that? I'm like, I don't. I just saw it. Whether you know it or not is unimportant to me. I just have to say what I see and what I feel like this means. And he goes, you don't know how much you've changed my life. And, and he says, I've been telling everyone, I could cry thinking about it. But he says, I've been telling everybody about this experience. And he says, and I said, funny that you should mention the story. And I just was putting out there that somehow you'd reach out to me. I mean, I have an idea. Maybe I'll write my version of the story. You write your version of the story. We'll give it to the ghostwriter. She'll write the story. And then you read it, and if you like it, I'll put it in the book. And she goes, he said, I would absolutely love that. So we did it, and it was like, I think I originally called it Connecting at COSTCO. I don't know what it's called now, if it's even in here. A Chance Connection. I think that's what it's called.
Love it. So this is exciting.
But this is where spirit, even though, I have boundaries. Like I don't do this very often, but sometimes it happens. And spirit has an agenda, and you just have to kind of go with the flow. Yeah. But does that happen to me every time I go to Walmart or Shoppers Drug Mart or Canadian Tire or Home Depot? No, not at all.
No. Yeah.
But occasionally it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when things align, and you can tell when spirit's like aligning everything just right. Then I know it's like spirit's guiding me, and I kind of go with the flow at that point.
Yeah, and you trust and you do it. Yeah, I love this. I love the storytelling aspect of your communication and your teachings, and your writing. I cannot wait to read that book. I did notice on your website it said that you're offering an exclusive 2-hour live training.
Yeah. So if you pre-order the book before August 8th, if you go to my website, shawn-leonard.com, on August 12th, between 8 and 10 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, I'm going to be doing a 2-hour discussion and teaching about some of the stories in the book and some of the concepts that I teach in my course. Because I have an online course called Spirit Talker Tribe.
Yes.
And it's a year-long course that I teach, which is also starting up for registration September 7th to 30th. But I'm going to be teaching a lot of the principles, or some of the principles. I mean, 2 hours is very limited time.
Yep.
But I'll be talking about the book, mainly in the stories in the book. But I've done a lot of things in the book about, how you can develop your clairvoyance, how you can develop some of your clairaudient abilities, clairsentience. What are they? How do they work? And, helping people understand your aura, your chakras and things like that. Even how to see your own aura. And I want people to understand their own spirit, and because it starts in here.
Yes.
It all starts with inside yourself, and you're raising your spiritual energy. It's through your spiritual work, through your words, your prayerful words that you speak with the Creator, or your ancestors, or your angels, or your spiritual guides, and then the meditative space that you train your mind to kind of see again, because we've become dormant in our ability to kind of see. And if you don't, it's an atrophied muscle that you need to work out, that you need to kind of exercise the ability to kind of see, to visualize, to hold images in your mind. Because if you learn to do that and work that muscle in your brain, one day spirit will shove something in your brain visually. Instead of seeing with your eyes, I mean, and this is a misconception a lot of people don't even really know, we actually think our eyes see, and they don't.
Yes.
Your eyes don't really see. The eyes allow light into your mind, or the visual cortex of your brain to see. Yeah. The visual cortex of your brain is where sight is. But the coolest part, I mean, this is science that has been done, that when you hook your head up to a bunch of electrodes and you're looking at something, let's say you're looking at this candle, right?
Right.
Whether it's lit or not lit, that you can look at that candle, and there's a certain part of your brain around the visual cortex and other parts of the brain that are going to be illuminated.
Yeah.
Because you're focusing on the light is allowing to your brain. But if you now close your eyes and remember and hold the image of the candle within your mind, guess what part of the brain is still lighting up? The same part.
The same part, yeah.
So your mind can see without your eyes.
Without your eyes, yeah.
And spirit can communicate through that visual inner sight, through images, impressions, whether it be literal, figurative, or what it may have you, to help you to see, to experience, to understand, or to give a message or a memory or something that will come through to validate something for someone else. And it's innate in us. And I think it's important to learn how to rework these psychic muscles. And that's just an aspect of clairvoyance, but there's also aspects of clairaudience and clairsentience that you can learn. And in the book, I teach some of it. I mean, my course, I teach it very in depth.
Yes.
And, but you know, it's a passion of mine.
Yeah.
I absolutely love, because you know what, you know, teaching, and that's why people write books. I'm going to tell you, nobody gets rich writing books.
Yeah.
It's more about sharing what you know.
Yes.
And I have a passion to share what I know. I know all this for myself, and I could be doing sessions, readings, live shows, but it's important for me to look at the world and see where we've been disconnected, where religion maybe has played a role in our disconnection from our spirit and our belief, and taken our cultures away, whoever you may be and such, whether indigenous or non-indigenous. But, you know, we're all psychic, and whether it's fear or worry, anxiety, stress, or disbelief, or even thinking that you can't do it, you know, those are all limiting beliefs that people have that I'm going to strip away and help you know that you're as equal. You know, in the Creator's eyes, there's no better than or less than. We're all equal. We're all the same children of the same Creator. Whether it's a masculine, feminine energy, or the sun, or universal energy that you define as the Creator, it doesn't really matter. It's all the same thing anyway.
Yeah.
But we're not separate from it. We're part of it. And the more that we become connected to it, remember who you are, and engage with it, and have it communicate to you, it'll shift your life.
Totally.
And this fear, the separation, the anxiety, the dogma that you've been taught will just dissipate.
Away. Yeah.
And you walk through life lighter.
Absolutely.
Full of, you know, more heart-filled, and embracing, you know, everybody in a good way, as opposed to in a fear-based or skeptical or.
Absolutely.
And skeptics are just people that are, you know, that have not experienced it.
Yes.
And I see people, you know, skeptical of like many things, but it's just because they don't really know. Yeah. And but try. If you don't try, you'll never shift your perspective. You have to give yourself a chance to see things in a different way. Yes. If you don't do the work and you don't try, you'll never know. So it'd be like living your whole life indoors with no windows, and somebody tells you the sky's blue. Right. Because I've been outside. Right. I've looked up. I mean, it's blue to me anyway. It's kind of foggy today, but
and that would be like incredulous to the person inside that's never seen.
Somebody could say, "This is silly. My walls are white and there's blue on the side, and like you're this is ridiculous." Yes. Well, have you ever gone outside and looked? No. Right. Well, maybe give it a go. Give it a try. And then you never know how your perspective may change in life, and how it may shift your perceptions of what reality is. And what greater gift to give. For me, not just healing, but my understanding or my knowledge, my wisdom to others, so that, you know, in order for the world to change their perspective, I have to share it. So, and I've in the book, whether it's Spirit Talker, you know, or through the course Spirit Talker Tribe, those are good ways that I feel that I can share this and get it out there, and to people who have like a deep thirst, desire to wanting to know more and go deeper.
Yeah. It will reach those people. It's beautiful. And I love that you incorporate stories, you know, experiences that you've had with spirit and with people, as well as those tips and, you know, the how-tos. I think that's so important. And really, it's just about trying, right? It's just about
stories, teaching with stories.
Yeah, this is on my list, so I'm glad you're bringing this up.
The teaching with stories is fundamentally a primary way that Indigenous knowledge has been passed down forever.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, their stories have been, exaggerated and changed.
Yeah.
But, the elders that teach the stories and pass them down from generation to generation, it's like a big fish story. Eventually that fish gets really big. But it's still the premise of what the story is telling you is still there.
It's still there.
Now, for me, I mean, I'm passing it down and I'm not exaggerating my stories. These are true stories. Mm-hmm. But, this is how I learn, through my experiences.
Yes.
And I share my experiences. And I know if there's a concept that I can tell you a story that would help you understand that concept, then that's where I go. I always revert back to this story, that story, or these different stories to help people understand, a specific concept in a certain way. And I think people would generally get it better that way.
Yeah, I agree. I learn best that way too. And I actually find my connection to spirit, like they will often show me, like metaphors, symbols, things like that, because that's the way I best learn.
Right.
So that's the way that I work as well. So I love that we have this connection. And that's really the pillar of of this podcast is storytelling. So yeah, I love this with you. I want to end with this you also have an oracle deck coming out. So this is your first one?
It's my first oracle card deck. Yes,
so excited.
It's called Wisdom of the Elders. It's also my website for pre-sale. I have not gotten a package of it yet. I just got the book literally just the other day. Yeah. So the Wisdom of the Oracle card deck comes out in, I think, September. Or no, actually October.
I've got October 24th. I got that off of Amazon. Yeah.
October 24th. So it comes out a little bit, but you can pre-order it now. And there's going to be, if you pre-order it, just keep your receipt or keep your receipt number, because there's going to be a bonus for that too.
Amazing.
After that comes out, because anybody that pre-orders the card deck as well, I'm going to be doing probably like an hour and a half live reading session utilizing the deck. Okay. I'm going to do like mediumship, of course, and having spirit communicate to me for people in the live session, but I'm going to utilize the cards to give messages as well, to see how you can combine the two.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the messages that are in the card deck, a lot of Indigenous teachings, but there's different messages in these teachings that can help people understand a certain aspect of life that they need to focus on,
right,
or a place that they need to kind of work on, and particularly. So the cards may help you with that. Way back when I started to do sessions, when I started to do readings, I was like, I was never that confident at the beginning. Let's say 26, 27 years ago. I'm 51 now, but when I'd always start. Back then I used to use I don't even think I have it here. Yeah, it's over there. I still have my same deck of cards.
Right.
And I never use it anymore, but I kept it. It was a Dorian Virtue Oracle card deck that I kept back then. And I would always draw like 3 cards before anybody came, and I wrote down what the cards were. And then when I did my sessions, I would connect to spirit, but then I would incorporate the messages in the cards of how you could guide people in a specific way in life, and incorporate in my readings, and it was very effective.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, as time went on, I didn't use the cards anymore, because I was so much in connection to spirit. My abilities had grown, and my understanding of those abilities have grown. That I never utilized them anymore. I just trusted spirit.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that it's not good to do that. I just feel like it's, I want to show people that are stepping into this maybe for the first time, or wanting to grow or develop, because initially that's what I did. I would use cards and do mediumship, and it would be the combination of two that would allow me to develop and grow even further.
Yeah, I'm smiling when I was talking, because when I was talking about the prep work, or the things that I would do before a session before that I no longer do, that's what I did. I would pull cards and I'd make notes, and I'd also set my intention to connect to this person's spirit people, and then take notes about what I was feeling ahead of time. And it was really just so I felt confident going into the session that I had this, and I was already in the flow, and I could start. And now I just feel like I can kind of do that without needing the cards, but cards are so fun, and I love
good to
cards.
Get the ball rolling, especially if you're nervous and you're not sure where to start or where to go from. Because what I say when you work with spirit, it's like it's like little breadcrumbs. Once you get moving into the reading, because you don't know everything. It's like revealed to you a little piece at a time.
Yeah.
And it's just so the cards may get that aspect where it leads to you focusing on some other aspect, or another little piece of the breadcrumb may come visually, and you're like, oh, okay, so, and you tie the two together. And it's just, it's really just getting the ball rolling and stepping into it and trusting. And then, when Spirit sees you in that flow, Spirit goes, okay, now we'll continue. It's like sometimes it's too much. It's like, oh my God, they're like, you guys got to slow down. I mean, I'm not even done talking to you already. Show me 2 or 3 other different things. You just give me some time.
Yeah.
And then, so even people who are doing sessions will see me talking to them, like, come on, slow down. I haven't even gotten here yet.
Yes.
And
I love that. I'm excited for these cards. Have you always wanted to create your own deck? How did that come about?
I did. It's the strange thing. I always thought about it.
Yeah.
And Hay House is my publisher, Hay House Publishing, and I've always wanted to be published by Hay House. And when I originally published my first book, The Language of Spirit, that is no longer available for sale, I did it through a sister company called Balboa Press.
Yes.
Which was a sister company, a self-publishing, sister company of Hay House. But when I started the TV show Spirit Talker, it wasn't even out there yet. I just did a pilot. The local producer, Telltale Productions, said, where should we go for the pilot? I said, well, I was supposed to be going to Listigouche, Quebec, on the New Brunswick-Quebec border to do a show there very soon. Why don't we just shoot the pilot there? And they said, perfect. So we went there, and during the pilot episode that nobody will ever see because it's a pilot, that this is what they were going to present to APTN to say, this is what the show would kind of look like.
Yes.
And then APTN would make the decision about whether or not the show would be picked up based on the pilot. So we filmed it in Listigouche, Quebec. And I read a lady in the audience named Tracy Metallic. And Tracy, which I didn't know at the time, I mean, her uncle came through and he was a photographer and he was a fisherman, and, some messages had come through, and she stood up, and then he started telling me that she was an artist. And I said, so Tracy, do you do some type of photography or art? She goes, I'm a Mi'kmaq artist. I'm like, no way. So we did a personal session after, and because I always do in the beginning, there was like a live format audience.
Yes.
And then the producers would pick a few people from the live show and go, okay, we're going to do one-on-ones with these people. And so she was, her and her aunt, or her sister, were chosen to be featured on the one-on-ones. So on the one-on-ones, I connected more to the uncle and some more things come through. But after the show, she showed me some of her art. I was like, oh my God, Tracy, this is like beautiful. Your art is beautiful. I absolutely love this art. And I said to her, I said, listen, one day I would like to do an oracle card deck. I don't know how it's going to happen, but one day I would like to do one. Would you think about being the artist for my deck if I got a chance to do one in the future?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, oh, I'd absolutely love that. And then, after Hayos picked me up, which is a weird thing in itself. I never was searching a publishing deal. I just self-published because I didn't even have an agent, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
I just put out a book, and actually Hayos found me. I got the tour with John Holland. I did 2 events with him. And he, incredible man, great medium and teacher himself. And anyway, he never forgot our time together. In the 2 sessions we did one in Moncton and Halifax, 2 events together. And he was down, and we still chat. I just messaged him the other day because unfortunately his little puppers passed away. Mm. His heart and soul, I'd say, because he was so connected to his little fur family, right? Mm. And he was in Hay House headquarters walking by an office. And he just overheard a conversation as he walked by the door when somebody goes, we need to get more Indigenous authors. And he backed up. He goes, what did you just say? He goes, yeah, we were looking to pick up a couple more Indigenous authors. Do you know any? He goes, you not heard of Shawn Leonard? Nope. You got to look him up. And so anyway, he started talking to them about his experience with me, and then they looked me up, and I get a phone call from Hay House. Goes, hey, this is Anna Cooperberg. I'm an editor with Hay House. Would you like to join us on a Zoom session? So I did a Zoom session, and then she goes, I want to do another one with you, but I want to do it with the vice president of Hay House. I'm like, okay, I would love that. So we did it. They said, Shawn, we're going to make you an offer. We would like to publish a new book by you. They asked me some of the ideas of things that I would like to write about. And she said, would you be interested in doing an oracle card deck too? I'm like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. Heck yeah. That's on my bucket list too. One day.
And
That's amazing.
it you know what? It was a little seed that I planted a long time ago. I didn't know how it was going to unfold or how it was all going to come together. But when you're on your path of life, everything comes to you.
Yeah.
The universe, the creator, your guides, everybody's conspiring to, at the right time, of course, because it took many years. Let's say it took 5 years or 4 years, 5 years for this all to come together. But it has.
Yeah.
I had no plan. I just said, well, I'd hope to do one. I called Tracy back up and said, Tracy, would you still be interested? She goes, absolutely.
Oh,
so
we
did it. And then I had another, because she's an artist, she's not a graphic artist. And a lot of the things had to be graphically put on cards and placed and things added and things like this. I had to call another Indigenous graphic artist named Aaron Gugu, who is a local Mi'kmaq guy from Indian First Nation.
Really?
Sebenacity
Awesome.
First Nation.
Yes.
And I asked him if he would help and he said, yeah, I'd absolutely love to. So
Amazing.
Between me, mostly Tracy Metallic, because she's the primary artist, and then Aaron doing his magic and adding a few things here and there, now there's an amazing deck coming out on October 24th.
I can't wait.
I can't wait for people to see it and have it and see the amazing art and the messages that come with it in regards to Indigenous culture, teaching, and helping just be better in life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I can't wait. I am definitely going to pre-order that as soon as we get off of this call. And it's lovely that you're supporting local artists and all that. And the seed planting, I was thinking about, this interview, like this is a seed that I planted many years ago. One day I'm going to interview Shawn Leonard. And one day I would really love to meet you in person.
Absolutely. Well, you said you're coming back to Nova Scotia. So
I'm coming back to Nova Scotia for good.
Keep me in the loop.
I will keep you in the loop.
And definitely I would love to meet you for coffee or something like that. And
love that.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's anybody that's out there thinking about, I'm not that unattainable. Trust me, I'm pretty attainable. If I feel that, like you, Amy, that there's a genuine person that is doing good work out in the world and serving people, I'll make myself available.
Yeah.
I'll find a way. I'll make a way. I'll make time in my busy schedule. So you have that energy, Amy, and I appreciate you and appreciate the work you're doing and how you're serving people. So thank you for the work you're doing, and continue to keep up the good work you're doing in your growth and development and helping other people learn about that as well. And I know that you're on your path, and I'm just grateful that our paths just crossed in this moment. But I'm sure they'll cross again.
I'm sure they will. Yeah, manifest. Who knows? Maybe one day I will be up on that stage with you. That's the next manifestation. I'm ready for it. Yeah, and authorship. And I love that you talked about self-publishing. Is that I am currently writing something that I'm hoping is self-published. Will be, words matter. Will be self-published in the future. So yeah, I love this. This is a really good ending point, but I really quickly want to talk about culture and how you reconnected back to this beautiful Indigenous part of you. So I've read your story. I know that your mom was from Newfoundland, right?
Yeah.
So how I just recently through my ancestry found out that I have some Newfoundland roots there too. So that's cool. How did you reconnect back to the culture? Was it through your work? Like, is that how? Is that how it all came about?
I went to school in Shubenacadie, which is called Sebenacadie now. But I grew up going through junior high and high school at a school where a lot of First Nation people were, which Mi'kmaq First Nation people, and I would say the school was probably very mixed.
East Hants, is that where we're
talking? East Hants, yeah. Between Mi'kmaq people and other people of different cultures. And I mean, I'm not full Mi'kmaq, but my grandmom is full Mi'kmaq, and somewhere I fit in the middle of all that. And I didn't learn about my culture, but I was still proud of who I was. I would say I looked in high school, looked a lot more like an Indian back then with my long hair and all that. But I never really started to connect to my culture until I started developing as a spirit talker. My grandmom, who's Mi'kmaq, had no memory of her language, no memory of culture. grew up in Newfoundland. According to Joey Smallwood, the premier of Newfoundland, there was not even Indigenous people in Newfoundland.
Wow.
And it wasn't until 1987 that the chief of Mabugak, Conn River First Nation, did a fast and walked to St. John's, all as a group to be recognized, and they were given recognition by Canada as being a First Nations community. And but my grandmom, it was kind of, I mean, there was a lot of like negative thoughts around being Indigenous, so she never really publicly identified. I mean, she obviously looked Mi'kmaq, but nobody looked at her differently.
Mm-hmm.
She was married to my grandfather, who was very Caucasian.
Mm-hmm.
But she'd always say, Shawn, you're Mi'kmaq, right? I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, but it doesn't. She didn't know anything more than that.
Right. Yeah.
And it was an experience that I had with a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That I was on McNabb's Island. I was at that point starting to really delve into wanting to understand the difference of levels of energy.
Yes.
Higher level energy, people that move on into the light, and people that are earthbound, which is very rare, but there's some here and there, earthbound spirits. And I went over to McNabb's Island because it's an old fort in the middle of Halifax, and I heard there was a few spirits lingering around, so I wanted to go check it out. So I went out there and I connected to these two fellows that seemed to be like soldiers that were earthbound and such. But during that experience, a big ball of light came down from the ceiling. I used to have this on film. Unfortunately, my ex-wife deleted all my files on my computer because she was a little bit, but that's a different story.
Another episode.
That's stay tuned for the days of our lives.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was this big ball of light that came down behind me, and you could see it on film, about this big. And I got pushed really hard. And he said something to me in Mi'kmaq. I knew some Mi'kmaq, but not very much. It could have been to the extent of Emsit Nogama. I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like that's what he said. And then we were in a tunnel underneath the ground. And then I started to smell this overwhelming smell of burning sweetgrass and sage and cedar and even tobacco. It was just overwhelming. And I could feel the spirit move through the room in a clockwise motion. And nobody has lit anything. We were down there. There were 7 of us, and everybody started to cover their mouths and go, "Oh my God, who lit something up? What is that smell? Oh my God, it's like overwhelming." But I knew it as smudge smoke.
Yes.
And then the 2 spirits that I was trying to kind of connect to that were earthbound, gone. This I'm going to say elder from a higher level spirit realm, or an ancestor, came up, said something to me in Mi'kmaq, and then pushed me really hard again, and then right through the ceiling. I was like, what the hell just happened?
Whoa. And
I wasn't really incorporating any of who I am as an Indigenous person into any of my work at that point.
Yes.
And I said, he just smudged the room. I know what smudging is, but I don't practice it.
Right. Yeah.
Smudging has power. Spirit world just showed me smudging has power.
Mm-hmm.
I need to learn about this. I'm being guided to learn about this by spirit, by an Indigenous elder and ancestor. So I prayed. I said, Creator, I lit some smudge that I haven't used in forever. I lit some smudge. I wafted some smoke up, and I said, Creator, my ancestors, my guides, I said, the ancestor that taught me the importance of smudging, send me someone. Send me someone that's going to help me learn about remembering who I am as an Indigenous person. Send me someone who's going to teach me about my culture. And within a week and a half, an elder showed up at my front door.
You're kidding.
And he goes, "Excuse me, I heard you're Shawn Leonard. Somebody told me I needed to come see you." I'm like, "Oh, really?" She goes, "Yeah." And it was a lady named Kathy Martin, who was a local filmmaker. And I read her at a live event. And this is the weird thing, because I was doing a Veith House charity event for children and families to be reunited. And anyway, I read this lady, and I didn't know she was Mi'kmaq, but I just read her and connected. I said, "So they're telling you that there's about 4 people murdered in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. And do you know a story of this?" And she goes, "I heard about the story yesterday." I said, "They're saying somebody named Joe." She goes, "Joe's the one who told me the story." I'm like, "So is Joe connected to these people?" And she goes, "Yes, it was his people." I said, tell Joe if he wants to know where his 4 murdered ancestors are, I can probably tell him. And that was it, moved on. And then Kathy goes and tells Joe. And then Joe shows up in my house, who is an elder, and goes, I heard you are Shawn Leonard. I'd like to come in. I heard you have some desire to learn about culture.
Wow.
I'm like, yeah. I'm like, how the hell did you even know who I am? She goes, well, you read somebody, and he didn't tell me he was the Joe from, I didn't even remember.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until later. He goes, he then asked me about where his grandparents and his great aunt and uncle were. And so I did end up going down. There were some cadaver dogs and locating a spot, and he did a ceremony there for them. And it was the spot in the very close area where it was witnessed like 80 years ago that they had been. And I had 2 separate dogs indicate on a specific spot where now a tree grows that was about 70 years old. And so I know it's a spot.
Yeah.
Wow. And it was what I saw at the thing and all that. It was that moment. It was spirit. Yeah. It said, Shawn, it's time to remember who you are.
Yeah. That's what I'm experiencing now. And I'm waiting for that person to come in for me. Because the same, my grandfather, my father's father, actually went to the Shibanakadi residential school, was there with his siblings. And so my dad didn't really grow up knowing anything about the culture because my grandfather he traumatized, obviously, and didn't speak much about it. And it's not until now when I'm doing this work and I've connected to my paternal grandfather that I've, been picking up on, and he's helping me with this. But I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put that out there and ask.
Put it out there.
I'm going to put it out there.
If you don't ask spirit, you'll never know what's possible. So I asked, and somebody had come, and it was a great gift to me because my grandmom lost all of her culture, her language. Mm-hmm. Even when I started to learn more about Mi'kmaq, I went back to visit my grandma before she passed, and I would speak some Mi'kmaq with her, and she didn't even know what I was saying. Yeah. And it was so sad. Because that she couldn't remember. Yeah. But I shared what I knew with her because it was was stripped from her because of the time and the period and all this. It's sad she wasn't in residential school. She married very young and escaped all that.
She escaped it.
Which was normal for some people.
Yeah.
But when I became more engulfed in learning about my culture, who I am as a Mi'kmaq person, I realized how spiritually enriched and connected the Mi'kmaq people have always been. Yeah. And through the different ceremonies, I don't teach ceremonies or anything like that. That's for elders. Yes. But I incorporate the wisdom, the knowledge, the teachings that I have in the work I do, and how I approach things in a good way, with kindness, compassion, love, and wholeheartedness. And, I work with spirit to help people learn, others. To grow, and hopefully heal a few hearts.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely heart-centered. Thank you so much for joining me today. I can't tell you how much this means to me, honestly. Just to be in your energy and connect to you this way is honestly a dream come true. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's you're part of my dream of being able to get out there and share this. So thank you too.
Thank you so much. Okay. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much, Shawn.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm sitting over.
Thank you for joining me for another episode here of the Intuitive Rising podcast. If you would like to continue the chats and join the community, please join us over on Facebook and search for the Intuitive Rising community. All are welcome. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider giving it a 5-star rating. If you'd like to connect with me directly, please visit my website at theintuitiverising.com.